Into its 7th week, the Israel-Hamas war has leveled vast swaths of Gaza, fueled a surge of violence in the occupied West Bank, and stirred fears of a wider conflagration across the Middle East. But then there was a pause. A temporary ceasefire agreement to facilitate the release of dozens of people in captivity from both sides. It brought a glimmer of hope to the families of the hostages in Israel. The truce is also raising expectations of winding down the war. On the 24th of November, the first day of the Gaza ceasefire, Hamas released 24 hostages held captive in Gaza for weeks. And Israel reciprocated. It freed 39 Palestinians from its prisons in the first stage of a swap. Israel cheered as 13 Israeli women and children emerged free from Gaza. The youngest was a 2-year-old. 10 people from Thailand and 1 from the Philippines were released too. Israel published a series of photographs of some of the people released by Hamas in the first batch. Yoni Asher, whose wife Doron and 2 daughters were abducted by Hamas, was reunited with them on the 24th of November. In a video released by the Schneider Children's Hospital, Asher is seen embracing his wife and children on a hospital bed. His 4-year-old daughter Raz told him that she dreamt they would come home. And Asher told Raz with a smile that her dream had finally come true.
הנה עכשיו החלום מתגשם, אנחנו בבית, זהו, אנחנו עוד מעט הולכים לבית שלנו. עוד מעט אנחנו חוזרים לבית שלנו.
On the other side, in Gaza, day 1 of the ceasefire brought the much-needed peace and quiet for 2.3 million Palestinians reeling from the relentless Israeli bombardment that had killed thousands. Palestinians rejoiced at the return of their loved ones held in Israeli prisons. 24-year-old Palestinian prisoner Mara Bakir was 16 years of age when she was taken into custody following an incident where Israeli soldiers shot her in the hand after she stabbed a soldier. Mara was freed in the first batch under the truce deal. With tears of joy rolling down her cheeks and a look of utter disbelief, Bakir's mother ran down to hug her daughter, who had spent 8 years in an Israeli prison.
I have mixed feelings, but at the same time, I'm very happy to be with my family. I will start a new life with them. They are crying, but it's tears of joy. I'm also happy with the other people, other prisoners who have gone home, and I'm hopeful that the largest number of prisoners could be released soon.
Mara Bakir is one of the many Palestinian women and children prisoners released from Israeli prisons in exchange for the Hamas captives under a Qatar-mediated deal that included an initial 4-day truce in Gaza. So what exactly is the Qatar-mediated deal? And what does the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas look like? Let's understand. The deal was brokered by Qatar, the US and Egypt. It capped weeks of negotiations and set the stage that could determine the course of the war. The ceasefire agreement between the Hamas militant group and Israel meant that under the deal, Hamas will free over a 4-day period at least 50 of the nearly 240 hostages taken in after its attack on Israel. In exchange, 150 Palestinian prisoners would be released by Israel. These were teenagers detained over the past year for minor offenses. Israel said the truce would be extended an extra day for every additional 10 hostages freed by Hamas, while Hamas said hundreds of trucks carrying humanitarian aid, including fuel, would be allowed to enter Gaza. The deal also included a provision for the International Committee of the Red Cross to visit hostages in captivity. On the second day of the exchange deal between Israel and Hamas, 39 Palestinians returned home. Isra Jabis was one of them. Watch the moment where she embraces her son after being separated from him for 8 long years in Israel.
Thank God, my pain is visible. No need to speak about it. I also feel pain on an emotional level, and I'm missing my relatives. But this is the tax a prisoner pays.
Jabez was sentenced to 11 years in jail for detonating a gas cylinder at a checkpoint in 2015. Visuals of families reuniting after weeks of agony have brought some respite to Palestine and Israel alike. For the first time in nearly 2 months, Shira Havron can breathe a sigh of relief. 6 of her 7 relatives taken hostage by Hamas have finally returned to Israel. The family members were among the 58 hostages freed under a ceasefire deal over the past 3 days.
For us, it doesn't end until everyone is home, and as much as we are relieved and grateful to have some of our family back and the kids, it's not over at all. We can't celebrate and we can't move on with our lives until everyone is back. It's a constant fight. It's not over at all.
At the very center of the handover, a quiet but crucial part was played by the International Committee of the Red Cross, or ICRC. Visuals of the releases show Red Cross staff in their distinctive white vests, emblazoned with its internationally recognized emblem, taking hostages from masked gunmen, carefully helping them into their vehicles, giving them first aid, and even playing with children in their first moments of freedom. ICRC is unarmed and relies entirely on the trust of the warring parties to carry out their work. In the same way as it has transported hostages out of Gaza, it has also taken to their West Bank homes Palestinian prisoners released by Israel in exchange. The humanitarian pause in the ongoing conflict in the Gaza Strip has brought attention to earlier hostage swap deals between Israel and the Palestinian factions. Hostage swap deals aren't a new phenomenon. It is the most common and effective means throughout the conflicts. Let's take a look at some of the past hostage swap deals between Palestine and Israel. The Gilad Shalit exchange case is one of the best-known swap deals. On the 25th of June in 2006, Gilad Shalit, then a 19-year-old Israeli soldier, was taken hostage by terrorist group Hamas in a cross-border raid near the Gaza Strip. Efforts to free Shalit became a rallying cry for thousands of Israelis who urged the government to secure his release.
שלום, כולנו מתרגשים לקבל את גלעד חזרה הביתה.
Charlotte was held in captivity for more than 5 years before being released in a prisoner exchange deal in October 2011.
كانت سنوات طوال ولكنني اعتقدت
I can't describe how I felt, but I felt that I was about to face some very difficult times. I missed my family very much. I also missed my friends. I very much missed meeting ordinary people to talk to them about my experience.
The number of prisoners it released to free just one soldier was astonishing. Under the terms of the deal between Israel and Hamas, mediated by Egypt, the Jewish state freed a total of 1,027 prisoners to secure Charlotte's release. Of all the people exchanged for Charlotte in 2011, none is as notorious as Yahya Sinwar, who has spent a large part of his adult life, over 22 years, in Israeli prisons from 1988 to 2011. Today, Sinwar is Israel's most wanted man. He's also considered the man behind the October 7 Hamas attack. Hostage exchanges between Israel and Palestinian outfits have been a complex and contentious aspect of their long-standing conflict. Back in 1983, in the largest ever deal, 6 Israeli soldiers held prisoner for more than 14 months by the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, in Lebanon were freed and returned home. Crowds of family and friends hugged and welcomed the returning soldiers. In exchange, Israel released more than 4,500 Palestinian prisoners, including some who were serving life sentences for terrorist attacks on Israeli civilians. Most of those prisoners were held in the Ansar prison camp in southern Lebanon, which was closed following the exchange. Two years later, in 1985, Israel conducted a swap deal with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or PFLP, in which it released 1,155 Palestinian and Lebanese prisoners from its jails in exchange for 3 Israeli soldiers held by the PFLP. In 1997, there was a swap operation between the Jordanian government and Israel, where Tel Aviv released Ahmad Yassin, the founder of Hamas, along with 2 of his companions. In return, Israel secured the release of 2 Mossad operatives who Jordanian security forces had arrested. And in 2004, Israel released 436 prisoners, including Palestinians and other Arabs, in exchange for Israeli businessman Elhanan Tannenbaum and the remains of 3 soldiers killed in 2000. Over the years, the practice of exchanging prisoners has become a recurring theme in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What is shaping up currently is just an extension and reflection of the past. The hostage exchange brings temporary respite after weeks of war. The final day of a 4-day truce was on the 27th of November. It saw an emotional welcome for hostages returning to their families after days in captivity. Nine children and 2 mothers were freed by Hamas on the 4th day of the truce. Among those released were 12-year-old Yagil Yaakov and his brother, 16-year-old Or Yaakov.
מקווים לטוב, זהו.
האמת שההרגשה בעיקר משחררת, אחרי שכל כך הרבה זמן חיכינו, בעיקר בימים האחרונים של העסקה, שהיינו מאוד בלחץ.
The truce resulted in a pause in the 7-week war between Israel and Palestine. Each day since the 4-day truce began on the 24th of November, Hamas has released some of the hostages, while Israel has freed some of the Palestinians it holds. Omar Imad Hassan al-Atshan was 17 years old when he was arrested. He spent 20 months in prison before he was released during the truce. Being at home, all he wants to have is a bowl of hot soup.
When I got released, I told my mum not to prepare food for me. I just want to have soup. The food in the jails is just 2 meals per day. An egg and a potato. Nothing more.
I slept at 4 a.m. because I couldn't believe my eyes that my son is sleeping next to me.
Hanan al-Barghouti was among the many Palestinians who still languish in Israeli prisons, most of whom without any charges. Hanan has been released and is back home with her family in Ramallah, but she says her days in jail were fraught with difficulties.
In the prison, we didn't have any of these things. We used to ask the warden of the prison to give us oil, but he refused. We would love to dip our food in oil. I'm eating these couple of days without any pleasure because I know that my fellow prisoners can't find this kind of food.
Hours before the 4-day truce was set to expire, Hamas and Qatar announced an extension of the ceasefire for 2 more days, bringing much-needed respite for the people in Gaza who braved weeks of the Israeli bombardment. While the Israeli government has yet to officially confirm the truce extension, the office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on X that 50 more Palestinian women will be released from Israeli prisons. On the 28th of November, the first day of the extension of truce between the warring sides, 30 Palestinian prisoners were released. Aboard a Red Cross bus, the Palestinians came home to their families and friends. In addition, 12 hostages were freed from captivity in Gaza. Despite the ongoing release of captives by Hamas, many Israeli families are waiting impatiently for news of those who still haven't returned. Ryoma Tarashansky, an Israeli mother of 2, is concerned for her 13-year-old daughter who's been held hostage in Gaza for 53 days. Her eldest son was killed by Hamas militants on the 7th of October.
I have 2 children. Gali and Leo. Leo is dead. We didn't make funeral yet. We just we couldn't grieve on him because we have Gali in the Hamas hands, and I don't want to lose another child. I have only Gali, and I want her back home as soon as possible.
Ryoma went on to plead with the US President and the Red Cross to facilitate the release of child hostages.
I'm asking from you, Biden, President Biden, to help me. I'm really begging you to bring Gali back home. We're terrifying to know what is going on with her inside in Gaza with the terrorists and the place that she's in. And we're just begging you and asking you to bring them back, bring Gali back and all the children back.
Many, like Ryoma, are still waiting for their loved ones to return home. Even for those whose loved ones were released, the joy at their liberation was mixed with profound sadness for others who are believed to be still in Gaza. And the emotions run likewise on the other side too. Since the truce came into effect, up until the time of broadcasting the episode, Israel has released 180 Palestinian prisoners, and Hamas has released 81 hostages, including 60 Israelis and 21 foreign nationals. The relief resulting from the truce seems to be momentary. For Israel, it is tempered by the fact that not all hostages have been freed. And for the Palestinians, the truce has been much too short. The truce has shown up in glaring detail the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Is this the beginning of the end of the war, or will the fighting resume again?